Episode 1, Learn Your Flute. Today we'll be learning what a flute is, which parts are which, how to take it apart and how to put it back together again. The flute is a very special instrument with a very special history. It was one of the very first instruments ever created, dating right back to the cavemen and originally made out of bone, with no keys at all. Eventually more and more keys were added to the flute, but there still wasn't a good system for the keys. The very famous flautist, Charles Nicholson, introduced larger holes for the fingers and a larger hole for the mouthpiece in order to get a better sound. The famous flute maker, Theobald Boehm, once heard Charles Nicholson play in a concert. Boehm was so impressed by the sound that he started developing the flute further. In 1832, the flute with key mechanism by Theobald Boehm was ready. Boehm called the new flute Wind-Clapping Flute. With this mechanism, playing the flute became much easier and the flute did sound much better. Flautists and orchestras were very happy with the invention by Boehm. We still play flutes made with this mechanism invented by him, only nowadays flutes are not so often made out of wood as they used to be. If you want to see how a modern day flute was made, click the link below. It's a very cool video, and if you can keep watching it for long enough, it's really interesting. Okay, so the first part of your flute that you'll need to know is this bit. Right, this is called the head joint. Because it's at the top of your flute and it's the closest one to your head, there's a hole here, that's the mouthpiece, right, which sits on the metal plate called the lip plate. The most important part of the flute is that this is the part where the sound comes from. This is what it sounds like. So it's got two different sounds. So one without putting your hand on the end, and one with putting your hand on the end. So doing that sort of just acts as a sort of a two-note system. You can, when you get a bit better, make different notes, but that's by moving your lips and it can get a bit tricky. Alright, so the middle part of your flute is called the body. Can you see where this is going? This is where all the keys are. This is called the body of your flute because in between the head and the foot, so sort of like a person. Right? The keys are the part of the flute that help it make different sounds. Right? So by pressing different combinations of the keys, then you get different sounds. So if you played any other sort of woodwind instrument like clarinet, oboe, saxophone, anything like that, it's the same principle, right? So these keys are the ones I was talking about earlier. This is the system that was invented by Theobald Boehm. Of course, it's been adjusted and tweaked over 100 or so years since he invented it and since it became popular, but in general, this is what he created, okay? So this is the body of the flute, right? This is your foot joint, because it's the base of the flute, so it's the foot part. This specific one is actually a B foot joint, right? It's called a B foot joint because it's slightly longer and it's got an extra key added, right? So it's got a little extra note that you can play with it. Most flutes in the flute that you'll most likely be playing will have a C foot joint. So imagine this, but like that. So that's probably what your foot joint looks like, just like that, okay? So that you can get down to, if you play piano, then you'll probably know middle C, right? That middle C, that low C, is the lowest note on the flute when you have a C foot joint. The B below that, that's just one extra note, whole extra part of metal. It's a little bit more expensive and not very many people have it in school. It's just more of an after school sort of professional thing, alright? Okay, so to put the flute together, you've got to imagine that there is a line running directly down the middle of your flute. So if you have a look up the very middle, okay, just imagine a line going right up through the middle, okay? So then you grab your foot joint, and the easiest way to do this when you're first learning is so where the knobs are at the end, so where the screws are, you just slide it straight. You just sort of slide it, twist it gently, make sure that your hands aren't clenching the keys too tightly because you don't want to break them. Right? And then you just twist until it goes on. Some might be easier than others. My flute's a little bit old now, so it's a little bit more difficult. Right? So once you've got that, this metal bar, these are called rods. These rods help you to align the flute. Okay, so then you've got it, and then you can see that it's going up through the middle. Right, so that's not too bad. Probably needs a little bit of an adjustment, but we'll get to that later. Then you grab your head joint, okay? And so remember what we did before, the head joint has the two different notes just by itself, which sound like this. That's the two different notes from that. You can also put your finger in and slide it out, so you can play hot cross buns as well, but we'll get to that on another lesson. Okay, so then you grab your head joint, and this one's a little bit easier to put on because it doesn't have any keys on it, so there's nothing you can break, right? So you grab the flute, and it doesn't really matter how you put it on at first because you're going to adjust it anyway, right? So same thing as the foot joint, and then you just slide it on, okay? Alright, so you can push it all the way down, or you can pull it out. That's got to do with the tuning, and we'll get to that in another episode as well, don't worry. Okay, so now you can see that middle line from the rod going all the way up, and then you can probably see there's the head joint. So what you want to do is when you're looking up the very middle of the flute, you want that invisible line, or you can get a ruler or a stick or a piece of paper as well, if that helps to imagine where the line is. So the line goes all the way up and then straight through the middle of your head joint, so through the hole. That helps just to position it on your lips, right? So it can get a bit, when you learn to play the flute a bit more, if your lips aren't sitting right, you will be able to feel it. And so you just twist the head joint, because once the head joint is in the flute, you can still move it. So you can twist it. It's got full 360 degrees of motion just because it's just sitting in there. It's just sitting in the top, so it can move all the way around, so that's okay, right? And so just keep checking. Check that your foot joint, the rod from your foot joint, is going directly up the middle of the body of the flute, up through the center of the keys, okay, up to the head joint, okay, and then at the head joint, right up through the middle of the lip plate, okay. Alright, so that's your flute, and hope you join me for the next episode. And in the next episode, I'll be teaching you how to get your first couple of notes out and just have fun with it. Okay, I hope that helped, and enjoy.